Live. There we go. This time OBS hasn't come up with failed to go live. It's like, why did you fail? Why did you fail?
I don't know, I was transferring footage earlier where it just would not transfer. It's like it kept going down to 1 kilobyte per second. It's like this is going to take 4 years. What is your problem, computer? Tell me our secrets.
And don't just tell me that you have a problem. Tell me what the problem is.
Is there anything more frustrating than just the push towards the whoopsie doopsie? Your computer had an upsie. It's like, are you going to tell me what's up? It's like, no. You're going to give me a code now.
It's like, no, just whoopsie doopsie, Karl. But anyway, welcome to the Wiki Weekdays podcast. I'm your host for this week's episode, Lucas Holland. And as always, it brings me a great pleasure to introduce my lovely co-host for the week, Karl Smallwood.
Hello.
For anyone new here, Karl and I are both trying to bring a wiki page for a fun discussion. Then, from that point on, it is your job as listeners to decide which wiki won this week.
Yes.
You can officially vote for that by joining our community Discord, the link to which you can find in the description below. And Karl, would you like to know which wiki won last week?
I would. So what were the choices for last week?
So,
the wikis that were brought to the table.
The wikis that we brought last week, I talked about Severance and you talked about Poison Ivy.
Yes. So Severance, the TV show, Poison Ivy, the DC character.
Indeed. And, little mini drum roll of Karl managed to win this week.
Hey, I won one.
Yeah, he's knocked down my little winning streak of a few weeks on the bounce there. Oh, but yes, obviously.
I think that's mostly Poison Ivy though.
That Poison Ivy just coming in and brainwashing everyone with her good looks.
So I was gonna say maybe it's the thumbnail that influences the discussion, but it was the Severance was the thumbnail.
Well, that was a bit of a weird one because I quickly made the live thumbnail as Poison Ivy, and then later changed it to a Severance thumbnail.
Ooh, more study must be done then.
Both of them got thumbnail time for that one, but yeah, the winner is always meant to be which you think brought the most fun discussion, and not necessarily what topic is your favourite.
Yes, because the topic that's your favourite might not necessarily result in a fun or interesting conversation, and likewise, a conversation or discussion about something you may not be familiar with may be interesting. That's the idea of the series, right?
It is, yeah, of course. And we are streaming this episode live. We've just begun. Don't worry in chat. You didn't miss much. So if you are here in the live chat, then, please leave a like to just help more people find the show while we are live. And, we will try to refer to chat every now and then. And if anyone drops any super chats in the show, we'll be sure to read them out. But if you're watching later on YouTube, just remember to give us the good old subscribe, all that nonsense.
Yeah, just press all the buttons that are on your screen that are able to be pressed, and it will help us in some way.
It will indeed. And then you can also remember that you can find us on most podcast services just by simply searching for the Wiki Weekdays podcast. You should be able to find us quite easily. And if you are enjoying the show that way, feel free to give us a nice little swell review if you think that we've earned it.
I still can't believe the branding of Wiki Weekends is something we came up with on the fly. Is entirely unique. No one else I know other people just read out wiki entries and stuff, but normally they'll pretend they wrote it.
Yeah.
This is not only a novel premise, but also the name Wiki Weekends is so strong. It's alliterative and literally describes what it is we're doing, and the format of just on the weekends, just talking about some wikis.
And that still blows weirdly, my mind. We didn't really do much research when we first came up with the concept, but SEO wise, there's not much competing with us.
Yeah, it's to the point where if you Google Wikipedia on YouTube, we appear in that.
We're being relatively high up, surprisingly, but moving on, Karl.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is that is similar is the depths of Wikipedia.
Yeah.
That's a fun follow. If anyone out there just likes this,
stop recommending other podcasts, Karl. Listen to our one. It's go give us more views. But yeah, we do have a couple of exciting themes to announce for the next couple of episodes.
Yes,
Karl.
we do. More exciting for me because I know it's stuff that I really, really like.
Well, I mean, next week's theme we both enjoy.
Yes.
And we are both going to be bringing a wiki entry around X-Men 97 to celebrate its comeback.
Yes, so that'll be a dueling wiki, but it'll be centered around the singular theme of the X-Men.
It will
I believe we're both going to pick a character, yes?
Yeah, we're both going to pick a character from X-Men, the 97 show. So again, just like maybe let us know in the comment section below, like give us a few ideas of some of the more interesting characters to discuss from that, because like I'm catching up on a few of the episodes now, but it's been a while. And then Karl, the week after is, as you say, one that you're going to be really excited for.
Like Gorilla Tech. Let's go.
Yeah, so the next week the week of like the 27th, so in 2 weeks time after this, we will be talking about Godzilla versus Kong. I will be finding a wiki page on Godzilla, and Karl will be finding a wiki page around King Kong.
He's got a robot glove in that new one, mate. They've given King Kong a fucking just power gauntlet, and he's like using it to whip skyscrapers at people.
Oh my god.
Like they've given him. Do you remember the game? Do you ever play Wild 9, the PS1 game?
Not
It's
really.
a really
no.
like it's an obscure pull, but it's like a PS1 game where you had like this electrical power gauntlet that you could use to throw enemies around. They've give King Kong that. Like King Kong's got a fucking lightning power gauntlet.
I kind of love that they're just embracing how stupid it all is.
Have you seen they're doing like promos where like do you know like the World Cup where footballers stand back to back?
Are they doing that with Godzilla and Kong?
Yeah, where they're like billing them as the actors. Because one of the things I've always loved about Godzilla and Kong is like they always get billed as themselves in the credits.
Yeah.
But we can discuss that in 2 weeks' time.
We can indeed. And, there are other places that you can find Karl and I on the interwebs, but we'll talk more about that later. And before we get into your thing, Karl, I just want to let people know, last time when we were live last week, our audio was a bit rough. So
yes,
just let us know if we're sounding a lot nicer and cleaner this week, please, in the live chat, because I went back and listened to it and was like, oh, this was so bad that I like took down the video, re-edited it all, and put it back out. So apologies about that last week. Hopefully we sound a bit crisper today. But Karl, what have you brought for us this week to talk about?
I have brought a wiki entry on one of the most prolific living authors.
Ooh, okay.
So prolific, people know, is like just very, very like a lot of stuff to their name, and that author is one R.L. Stine, the author of Goosebumps.
Yes, I was like, I know that name from somewhere. Ooh, okay.
And do you know why? I mean, you might be thinking, why now?
Like, why not around Halloween theme it, Karl? No.
Or because Goosebumps are like, a very 90s thing. That's because, Lucas, when do you think the last Goosebumps book came out?
Probably like 3 years ago, right?
Last week. Like, there's one last week and it's just called, like, Goblin Monday or something like that.
Oh my god, there's still Goosebumps coming out.
And it's still by R.L. Stine.
Oh my word, that is a catalogue.
It is. So today we're on the Goosebumps wiki on the list of Goosebumps books. And we're not going to go through all of them because there are quite literally over 100. Like I said, he's one of the most prolific living authors.
Yeah, you could ask me what my favourite ones are. I've got no idea what the names of them are. I guess one of them's probably called like Bump in the Night, but I don't remember the names of them all and stuff.
Yeah, well, I brought one of my favourite Goosebumps books, and it's Deep Trouble. Ooh, okay. I love the Goosebumps books. I've always wanted to get a full collection of them. So when I end up getting
shit ton.
There's a lot. So one of the things I've always wanted to do is get like a full collection of the Goosebumps books. Because I think, they're not like, classic literature or anything like that. But just the fact that they are 120 pages. I think almost every Goosebumps book is just over 100 pages. Short horror stories that are a little bit scary, a little bit spooky, but not in a way where it's like too much for like, a younger child to handle.
Yeah, they are written with a younger child in mind. Like, well, maybe not a younger child, but children in mind.
Children, it's these are like the first kind of books you'd start reading when you first basically learn to read. After you've like learned how to read, and it's the short stories, isn't it? It's like a novella almost. And the fact that there's hundreds of them and there's on a bunch of different topics, and he's still doing it.
I think you showed off that Goosebumps book there for the video watchers,
That's
but
Deep Trouble too.
The ones that I always liked, I think it was Goosebumps that did it with like the 3D effects on the front.
Yeah, and there's also, obviously they had a few gimmicks as well. They also had like the anthologies. They also had the Choose Your Adventure ones, if you remember those.
Oh, did Goosebumps do some Choose Your Own Adventure ones? Yeah.
And one that always sprung to mind is the Choose Your Adventure one, where it's like a genie.
Ooh.
Where it's like you get to choose which wishes you have.
Oh, that's a cool concept, yeah.
And I've always just been a big fan of like, the Goosebumps series. Just the idea of, encouraging kids to read.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. And, like, what's a good way to get kids to read? It's like, make it something that's a little bit taboo, like something scary, something you're not supposed to read. Like, it even says on the front of every single book, readers beware, you are in for a scare.
Oh yeah, that's a good tagline and a good concept of like, ooh, be scared, kids. Like you're not really meant to be reading these.
And it's a similar concept to another series I'm a huge fan of. It's certainly more British, but that'll be the Horrible Histories series,
Yeah.
which are similarly, like, very well written books about history, and they have, like, groovy Greeks, rotten Romans, and it's like, it's the more sordid details from history written in a way that's friendly for children, because they know that kids are more likely to be interested in history and science if you tell them the gross things. You tell them about the farts and the...
Well, the reason I have only ever opened up a Horrible Histories book was like the ones with all the illustrations in,
Yeah,
where you
also
could get like
illustrated.
those big double page illustrated spreads, and I'd look at like, oh, where are all the bits with like someone getting beheaded in France and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a way to get people to consume content. Like, it's the same way, that YouTubers do it. Like, we're going to talk about, say, this topic, we're going to pick the seediest part of it to, like, draw you in.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just a big fan of, like, anything that encourages children to read and to learn.
Yeah, 100%.
And like the Goosebumps series.
Well, yeah, I mean, you mentioned Goosebumps and Horrible Histories. Two of the things that I probably read most prolifically as a child. Yeah.
One of the things I love about Goosebumps as well is I see Goosebumps, they are the literary equivalent of Hot Wheels. And I'm going somewhere with this, where
okay.
it is a pocket money purchase, where Goosebumps books always cost about £3 to £4. Even now, you can pick up a Goosebumps book for a couple of pounds.
I was going to say, like, how expensive are they nowadays? Yeah, I was wondering.
A couple of pounds. You can pick them up, like, pre-owned, obviously, very cheap, but even the newer ones only retail for a couple of dollars or a couple of pounds. And it's the same thing with, like, Hot Wheels, where if you're a kid who likes, like, collecting toy cars, or you're interested in cars, like, Hot Wheels still cost a couple of pounds. Like, you can buy it with your pocket money.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that it's a nice entry, like, level thing for children who are interested in this. And the Goosebumps series has inspired a love of horror in myself that bleeds through to this day.
And it has probably inspired a hatred of horror, even though I liked Goosebumps. The moment I got outside of the realm of Goosebumps and started getting any scarier, that was too much for me.
Well, I'm more of a fan of as well. The thing I've talked about when it comes to, like, horror and sci-fi and stuff is I like films where there's an interesting concept, and I feel horror is one of the most experimental genres because what is scary is such a subjective thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, anything can be scary depending on how you look at it. It's like,
if you think about media in general, it's like, generally speaking, a lot of books, films, TV, games, like a lot of those different things presented in horror genres, they are often just cheap and weird and experimental, and as you say, like, kind of where some of the weirdest, craziest stuff kind of comes from.
It is a genre that allows for a great degree of experimentation. And that's why I like horror movies and sci-fi movies so much, and sci-fi and horror media, because there's often, a lot of interesting ideas presented therein. And the specific reason I love Goosebumps books is because Goosebumps, they're short books. That's not a thick book.
It's not, no.
It does not overstay its welcome. And that's why, as much as I love horror movies, sometimes I feel they really overstay their welcome.
Yeah.
Same with, like, some of, like, the longer horror books that I've read. Like, they really do overstay their welcome and they're not scary after a while. But, a short horror story, or, a short horror movie, or an anthology movie with, like, lots of different vignettes exploring different ideas, that's a way to grip me. Because there's a good friend of mine who's currently traveling, where every couple of weeks we'd meet up and watch horror movies. And we just really love watching, like, the Wreck movies, for example. Because they're, like, anthology movies where it's, like, 5 or 6 different, like, 10 to 15 minute long horror vignettes, just exploring different ideas, and not all of them are winners, but you're only watching it for 10 minutes.
I'm trying to remember which, like, old school author it was that just had, like, anthologies of short horror stories and scary stories.
Stephen King.
No, not Stephen King, it was someone else.
Okay, because I'm a big fan of Stephen King's short stories as well. I don't like his longer books, but his short stories are really good.
Yeah, I just remember going through, like, a bunch of those in high school and being like, oh, these are great because these are all like 50 pages long, and just get in and out, just one cool little concept, and just Yeah, scary idea, and you're just in and out, and it's enjoyable.
Yeah, and I'm also just a fan as well of just the creativity, like
Mm-hmm.
such a genre affords. Of okay, so like Monster Blood, for example, is one that always springs to mind, where it's the Blob.
Mm.
It's the concept of the Blob, of just this amorphous creature we can't understand that just absorbs things, but rather than absorbing people, it absorbs moisture. That's how Monster Blood works.
Fair.
But just the creativity afforded to it, and just the ideas explored therein are fun. But we have here just the table of every Goosebumps book ever written. I'm just going to scroll right to the bottom to see how many there actually is.
Okay, yeah, because I'm wondering, do they like rank them in any kind of way other than just release date?
Actually, no, this is not the full list because there is. I have to expand. So I'm going to go to the very bottom and expand the final one. Oh my god! Yeah. Okay. So there are Goosebumps like series.
Okay.
So the original Goosebumps run was 62 books.
Right. Yeah.
But then we have Goosebumps Monster Edition, which is another like 10 books. So I wouldn't. I'm just gonna. Like, can you do a check for me and just say
what's the check you want to do? I was going to say
how many Goosebumps books are there in total? And I say we just stick to the Goosebumps original series for now.
Yeah, sure.
And what we'll do is I say we just read a couple of the blurbs and just talk about like the idea behind them, because that's one of the things I enjoy so much about the horror genre, of like the concepts presented therein, how they make something like that scary.
Yeah, I'm having a look here, and the first few answers just come up like there's 62.
But that's the original series, and he's still right. And the original series like ran till 97. As I said, R.L. Stine released a Goosebumps book last week.
Okay, yeah. So I'm on like the wiki here, and it's a Goosebumps original series, Monster Edition. Tells to give you Goosebumps.
That's what I'm on. Yeah,
give yourself Goosebumps, and it's like, yeah, there's just loads and loads.
You know what? We'll check in the break. We'll check in the break and come back with how many in total there are.
Yeah.
But like it opens with number 1, Goosebumps. Welcome to the Dead House.
Okay.
And the cover is just like a scary house, and I have here the blurb. Look alive. Amanda and Josh think the old house they have just moved into is weird, spooky, possibly haunted, and the town of Dark Falls is pretty strange too. But the parents don't believe them. You'll get used to it, they say. Go out and make some new friends. So Amanda and Josh do. But these new friends are not exactly what they had in mind, because they want to be friends forever. And that's well, something we talked about on Fact Fiend back in the day is the idea of, I mentioned Horrible Histories, and the reason I think Horrible Histories, the show, was so good, and something they talk about, is that it being made for children is, for a lot of comedians, so Horrible Histories, the show, was like probably one of the best comedy sketch shows ever made. Like it won a bunch of awards, and they talk about behind the scenes of a lot of comedians would think that having to make it for children and having to have every sketch we do be, 1, historically accurate, but 2, also funny, would be a huge ball ache and a limitation. But it's those limitations that actually allow us to be creative, because then we have to think of creative ways to make things that can be entertaining while still fulfilling those 2 criteria. And it's one of those paradoxical things of the limitations are what actually encourage the creativity. Because if you're able to do whatever you wanted, you might not think of the things that they do. Like, if you could just make a show where you can put like the sketches where there's like sex and violence in them, you might not think to do what they did in like, the Horrible History sketch show.
Yeah, and
it's similar to like Goosebumps.
I think that's, often when we talk about like, we recently talked about Terminator and the fact that like, what special effects were used and what were computer generated effects and what weren't. And I think that kind of is one of those weird things about filmmaking nowadays, is that with the way that CG is now, you can just make whatever the fuck you want. There aren't any limitations anymore.
So there's no problems to solve.
Whereas I think that there's that kind of weird, awesome moment where CGI started to get like pretty good in the late 90s, early noughties. Like, if you used it in the right way, like in Terminator 2, like we talked about, and
Jurassic Park.
But it wasn't so great that you could just rely on it completely.
Yeah, you had to still figure out problems, and it's similar to the Goosebumps series, where like Stephen King wrote a lot of scary stories, but R.L. Stine has also wrote a lot of scary stories, and he has the additional criteria of having to make them for children. So you can't have things that are too scary. You can't have concepts that are too difficult to understand.
You can't write
And
something that's gonna make most kids like stay up at night scared. Yeah.
and the fact that then, but you still need to make it scary.
Hmm.
And that limitation is what makes them so interesting. Of like, you can't just say the monster kills you because you can't have a children's book where people die.
Yeah.
That's not that you can't do that because that'd be too scary. That'd be too, just raw a concept to put into a children's book. And as a result, it kind of gets some of the things he introduces are scarier because of that limit. It's hard to explain. You know what I mean? Yeah.
No, I do know what you mean. Yeah, and fitting name, Ghost Wheeling Charts just mentions that there's 235 books all series to date. So thank you for that.
So he's written 235 Goosebumps books.
That's a lot of books.
It's a lot of books, and there's probably like a lot out there that'd be people's favorite.
Yeah,
Like I said,
God, they must be averaging like maybe what? So like early 90s. So they've been doing it for 30 years.
I think like in the 90s, I think he wrote like one a month.
Yeah,
and then like he kind of like drifted away. Then they have a TV show, and I think he was executive producer on the Goosebumps. The Goosebumps TV show was terrifying. There's a couple of episodes of that live in my head rent free. Of like the Goosebumps TV show, and the one that got me, it's not the most original of ideas, but it's like the mirror. There are mirror people.
right. Okay, yeah.
And it's like your mirror self comes out of the mirror and takes over your life, and it's the person trapped inside the mirror.
I was gonna say, aren't they like trying to get you into the mirror so they can have a real life?
Yeah, they can steal your life, and it's not the most, I said, original of like horror concepts. Like a lot of horror is like using old tropes, but in like new and interesting ways. Speaking of which, the second one was stay out of the basement.
And again,
And it's just like a hand like crawling out the basement.
A simple concept of like similar to Monsters Inc. playing on a trope of there's like a monster in your closet. It's like, oh well, you don't know what's down in the basement. It's scary and dark in the basement.
Yep. Dr. Brewer is doing a little plant testing in his basement. Nothing to worry about. Harmless, really. But Margaret and Casey Brewer are worried about their father, especially when they meet some of the plants he's growing. Then they notice their father developing plant-like tendencies. In fact, he's becoming distinctly weedy and seedy. Is it part of their father's harmless experiments, or has the basement turned into another little shop of horrors? And one of the things as well I like is he's writing it for children, but it was written as well with the understanding that a lot of these books, parents might read them to their kids, like, a scary bedtime story before they go to bed.
Yeah.
So the fact he's putting in like little shop of horrors references. Also, my camera's froze, hasn't it?
Yep. I just started panicking then of like, oh no.
Like Luke's just became panicking Skywalker.
I did. Carl, you just go sort that out, and I'll keep the chat going for a moment. But just the idea that it started in 1992, so it's as old as I am. That means that they were averaging like just over 7 books a year, which, okay, they are short stories, they are kids' stories. 7 books a year is like mightily impressive. And I don't know what's just happened with like the layout of the podcast for a second on the video version because Carl's jumping in and out. But yeah, it's just, man, like I can't imagine sitting down and consistently averaging 7 books every single year for like 32 years of your life.
No, gone back. What's up? What a mess.
No, I was just saying, like, it started in 92, which means over 7 books a year on average for 32 years.
Oh, okay. Do we need to like resync up or anything like that?
Oh no, we'll be fine. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Make a note of where we do it so we get. Yes. Before I was so rudely interrupted by my own recording software. The idea that parents might read these to their kids, so he puts in like a little shop of horrors reference, and that's something I remember like about the Goosebumps books, like looking back on them as a teenager who started to discover films. You can tell R.L. Stein just loves this genre.
For sure.
And there's like a lot of love and care and craft put into there. And there's so many like silly references. Like there'll be characters who are named after like Stephen King like characters or Stephen King himself or other horror authors. And there's references to horror movies because horror is a very self-referential genre.
Of course, yeah.
Well, because to make a horror movie subversive, I think we've all seen like Scream, isn't it? Where that's a horror slasher movie where they're aware of slasher horror movie tropes.
At least they started out that way, and then it's like panning to just the nowadays version of like when they're promoting Scream 6 and like, this is the scariest horror film you've ever seen. This was like initially a parody movie essentially.
I don't mind the latest one though, because where like just Ghostface gets a shotgun, and loads of fans were complaining about that's really stupid. He's supposed to use a knife, and then in the film, it's like, but a knife is stupid. Shotgun's better.
And I mean, at the end of the first movie, they just start using guns, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's not really meant to be that much of a thing to stick to. It's not like they've ever said in the movie, like, I would never use a gun.
Also, it's a different killer in every movie. But
exactly, yeah.
We have here, Lucas. Like I've just sent you the picture of like the third book in the series. Say cheese and die. Look at that cover, or the fourth book in the series. Sorry.
Well, I had to scroll through, and I think it was about a dozen down. The one that got me that I definitely remember was like the Haunted Mask. And then
yes, I can see that one. That looks super cool. Like the artwork is always really cool.
The artwork was always very cool, but I must have read other series because I went down through most of them and was like, out of the original 62, there's not that many I recognize art-wise.
I think there were re-releases and stuff as well.
Yeah, I'm sure there were, but like I may have gotten in a bit later because I think by the time like those ones were coming out when I was only a few years old, so maybe it was I started getting in, in the post Goosebumps original series.
Yeah,
world,
but there's just like some classics there. But look at the one I just sent you, Lucas, of Say Cheese and Die.
The Say Cheese and Die one.
Yeah, I just sent it to you on Discord. Like, look at that bad boy.
Oh, just the skeletons roasting up.
That's what I like.
Going.
Yeah, there's a way to describe the artwork. And I'm not sure exactly actually, but it's obviously it's scary, but there is a distinct look to the Goosebumps covers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, I love as well, like, you probably don't show up much on camera, but anyone who remembers them is like, it's like this weird, like, bubbly look to the primary colours in the background.
So just for like people watching on the video version, like this is Say Cheese and Die of just the big skeletons roasting up a Barbie.
Just Skelly's having a grill. Skelly's having a grilly. We have here. Every picture tells a story. Greg thinks there's something wrong with the old camera he and his friends found. The photographs keep turning out wrong. Very wrong. Like the snapshot Greg took of his new father's car, that showed it totaled. And then Greg's father is in a nasty wreck, but Greg's friends don't believe him. Sherry even makes Greg bring the new camera to her birthday and take a picture. Only Sherry's not in the photograph when it develops. Is Sherry about to be taken out of the picture permanently? Who is going to take the fall next for the evil camera? And again, pretty classic horror movie trope. Like, that's just The Ring, right?
I mean, yeah, that's not far off The Ring, yeah.
But you've now got to tell the story of The Ring, but no one's allowed to die. But you're still going to make it scary. And that's the thing. Imagine trying to make a movie where it's like, write a story where you've got to make it scary. You've got to make, like, the evil entity within it a threat, but it can't kill you, and you have to do it in less than 150 pages.
Yeah.
That takes skill.
It does, yeah.
You have to make it scary, but you can't make it scary by killing someone.
And I'm sure there are, like, good books and bad books in that, like, pile of 230-something, but...
There's probably some bad Goosebumps books out there, but still, like,
consistent enough to keep getting published for 30 years is impressive.
It is indeed, yes. And I think one of the most famous ones is Night of the Living Dummy, featuring Slappy the Dummy.
Yeah.
Probably the single most iconic character from the series, yes.
I think they became, like, the mascot of Goosebumps almost, yeah.
Yeah, which is a shame, because I always like the Monster Blood series, which got, like, 4 books, but Slappy kept coming back.
Slappy always kept coming back, and I'm pretty sure they used Slappy as, like, the face of the TV show as well, right? When they were promoting it and everything.
But as well, it's taking advantage of the fact that just dummies are inherently scary. A ventriloquist dummy is a very scary thing.
Creepy ass dolls, yeah.
Like porcelain dolls, or just like, an old toy. Like, I think one of the scariest visuals is just like, an old toy just sat on its own. There's a couple of visuals that always like get me. One is like, old toy abandoned. The other one is, and this is a very specific one, and I can't think of a movie where it happens, but it's a very common horror movie trope. And that is a big empty room with no lights in it and one chair that's in the corner.
Or like one chair that's there in like a dark little spotlight or something.
Yeah, or a wheelchair. Just on its own. Like an abandoned piece of furniture, but only one in a completely empty room otherwise. I feel it's a very strong visual.
Yeah, and then when you've got a little ventriloquist dummy sitting on that lone chair in the attic, like, oh no.
Not great. So we have here, he's no dummy. Lindy names the ventriloquist dummy she finds Slappy. Slappy is kind of ugly, but he's a lot of fun. Lindy's having a great time learning to make Slappy move and talk, but Chris is jealous of all the attention her sister is getting. It's no fair. Why does Lindy always have all the luck? Chris decides to get a dummy of her own. That'll show Lindy. Then weird things begin to happen. Nasty things. Evil things. No way a dummy can be causing all this trouble. Or is there?
And just, yeah, it's kind of the dark side of Toy Story, right? Of like, oh, well, toys come alive when you're not watching and start doing things. But what if they wanted to murder people?
Yeah. And then we have one of the ones that I referenced earlier. Be careful what you wish for. Samantha Bird is a klutz, an accident waiting to happen. She's the laughing stock of the girls' basketball team. And here's the thing that I like about the Goosebumps book as well, because R.L. Stein is like, I want boys and girls of all ages to be able to read my books.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one thing he'd do is he would like say, I'd write one with a male protagonist and then one with a female protagonist. But I'd always like to have a mixed gender group of friends when they're in stories.
Mm-hmm.
Because I want people to be able to empathize with one of the characters within my stories. And if you watch the Goosebumps TV show, which I think still holds up, the effects don't.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And that dog that looks towards the camera has the glowing eyes. The strength of the stories does. That's another thing where when he serves as an executive producer, he was always keen to say, I want there to be, boys and girls can be friends. And there's, I want a mixture of genders and races in the thing, because this is scary stories are for everybody. Stories are a very communal thing. Campfire stories, essentially.
Yeah, it's one of those things of as one of the the two members of this channel, I'm very keenly aware of okay, we are just two white dudes on camera, so that naturally inclines a very similar audience to our own. But that's why I like to try and do our best to reach quite a broad, different, diverse amount of subjects and interests, because I want a wider audience of not just white dudes to come and feel welcome here. Is
be careful, Lucas. Brie Larson said that once, and
that's the thing. It's just I hope everyone in chat is aware that we always want to make people feel welcome, and we invite people that don't just look exactly like us to watch our content, and hope that we encourage people to do so. And it's nice to always see people female in chat, just thank you. It's just, we do our best, and we try to talk about things that it's not just, everything's got to be around white dudes like us, and just we want to welcome people. So I do feel that pain in just writing, your at least cast of characters to be diverse and welcoming to everyone.
Yeah, and I am aware that between myself and Lucas, the joke I always make is, we look like every guy online.
Yeah,
I've got short, dark, shaggy hair. I was longish, shaggy hair, kind of skinny, kind of tall, and you've got coloured hair, a beard, and glasses. Between us, we are default man online. We're also the two easiest looking people to make in any game.
Yeah, right. It's as long as you just have again, coloured hair, glasses, beard. I know I've got really bad roots at the moment, but it is still dyed. But yeah, it's just that covers me to the point where that's what I made a logo for my channel as. And it's and then just it's just make the tall, skinny, generic looking brown haired dude, brunette. Yep. That's the word. We can
even though we look generic, we try and make content for everybody.
You can find Karl starring on the box of The Sims 3 as well.
That always gets me, that one. If you go Google Sims 3 Xbox 360 release, just the guy on the cover, just me doing this. So, coming back to be careful what you wish for. It says here that Judith Bellwood is making her life miserable on and off the courts, but everything's about to change. Sam met someone who can grant her 3 wishes. For real. Too bad Sam wasn't careful what she wished for, because her wishes are coming true and they're turning her life into a living nightmare. And that's a very, very classic tale.
Mm-hmm.
The tale of the genie's wishes, but it's you wish for, I want to live forever. But you weren't very specific about what you wish for, so living forever doesn't mean that you can't feel pain.
What was the one where it was the kids' TV show where they had the coin and they'd always flip a coin and ask for a wish or something like that?
I can't remember that one.
I can't remember.
Is that the Queen's Nose?
Maybe it was that, yeah.
Queen's Nose, where it's you've got to make a wish while you're rubbing this 50p piece.
That might have been it, yeah.
So I always thought they should have a crossover between the Queen's Nose and Bernard's Watch, and
Bernard's
they
Watch
take over
was
the
always
world.
the other one, yeah, right.
It's a kid. It's a TV show that aired in the UK where it's a kid who has a watch that stops time, and he used it to like just do like random shenanigans instead of like becoming a living god.
But that's what a 10-year-old would do with something
Of
like
course,
that.
they do
Yeah.
it for stupid stuff like stealing sweets and stuff, and it's always he learns a lesson of like not abusing the power of the watch to solve all of his problems, even though realistically it could solve every conceivable problem in existence.
That's the exact wrong lesson to learn when you have the power to stop time.
That's the one, yeah. It's like, okay, try and solve it using your own, but like that's fine when it's like at anything else, but you've got the ability to stop time.
Yeah, it's like I get it. You're trying to instill good morality within children, but when the device is just I think there was no limitation to it as well. It just stops time.
Yep. And it's like the other one, like the Queen's Nose, where it was the ability to make a wish, but the wish could be anything, and there was no limit to how many times you could do it. And the thing that always cracked me up is I think the gimmick was you had to be rubbing the Queen's nose on the 50p piece when you made the wish. But the problem is they had to come up with increasingly convoluted reasons why people would be holding a 50p piece in that moment. Like, imagine like they made the modern version of that, and it's just you've got to hold a credit card.
Oh god.
And I always like the probably the unintentional message there that you can solve any problem with enough money.
I mean, I guess that could be read as like the metaphor behind it, yeah.
But do you have any speaking of making a wish that goes wrong? Can you it's a very classic trope from fiction. Is there any examples that spring to mind for you of like someone making a wish that goes terribly awry?
Not off the top of my head. I mean, you were talking about though, like not necessarily wishes, but decisions, and like going back to the how to choose your own adventure books.
Yes.
It's like I don't know if you ever just like did the thing where I'm sure most people
you open it up, you look ahead and like.
Oh no, I didn't do that. I never skipped forward to like reach the conclusion. But anytime it was like you made a bad decision, a bad thing happened to you. It's like, go back. Yeah. I didn't make that decision. I made the other one. Honestly, it's like, go to the other page instead. Game the system. Like
what
basically save scumming.
Like, save scumming in a book.
In a book.
You save scumming your own imagination because basically you're just rewinding the story in your own head.
And that's why I think like I really love difficulty modes. Like I think it's like the Iron Man mode on XCOM, where
no save scumming.
You're not allowed to save scum. You've got to live with the decisions that you make, and you're not allowed to just be like, "Oh no, I didn't mean to do that." Oh, but
that's...
I was going to say though earlier, like other TV shows in relations to Goosebumps, there's Are You Afraid of the Dark, right? That was the parallel to Goosebumps.
Yeah, Goosebumps is the superior show because it stars a young Ryan Gosling.
Does
in
it?
One episode? Yeah, because it was like filmed in Canada, so there's a bunch of like Canadian actors who got their first role on it.
That's cool. Yeah, I wasn't aware that Ryan Gosling was in an episode of Goosebumps, but like I wasn't sure whether Are You Afraid of the Dark falls into the similar category of Goosebumps of just written by one person.
I think How Are You Afraid of the Dark was maybe an anthology series. I'm not too sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like I remember it being a competitor to Goosebumps, but I don't remember like which one came first, whether that was just a way to like jump on the trend of Goosebumps or something.
Yeah, it's more like Goosebumps was just the superior show, and it had the better theme song. Just the dun 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 dun. And it had like the horrific imagery coming up on screen. Like Goosebumps is like the X-Files for like 13-year-olds. That's how iconic it was.
Yeah, I guess
literal
so,
like Monster of the Week episodes.
That is true.
I just want to like make a clarification because someone in chat mentions like the monkey's paw. There is a distinct literary difference between the idea of the monkey's paw and the genie's wish, because both of them are wishes where something goes wrong, but there's a difference in how they go wrong. Whether the genie's wish goes wrong because it interprets your words in a way that you didn't anticipate.
Mm-hmm.
So like say like, oh, I want to live forever, but you don't specify that you want to live forever without, like feeling pain or aging.
Yeah. So you become a decrepit old person that can't die.
Yeah. It's about granting your wish in a way that you didn't expect from the way you worded it. Whereas the monkey's paw gives you exactly what you want, but then makes you want to regret the wish. That's the difference. Like it grants your wish exactly as you ask for it, but in a way that makes you regret it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I
So that,
always assumed that, like, yeah, the monkey's paw, that something has to go wrong, whereas a genie, like, if you are careful and word it the correct way, then you could get away with the genie not fucking you over.
yeah. So it's like someone in chat has mentioned, like you wish for £1,000, where you get hit by £1,000 of weight.
Yeah. And like,
And that'd be like the genie's wish. Where
yeah,
the genie's wish would be like hit you because obviously you didn't specify exactly what you wanted. Where a monkey's paw would be you get £1,000, but it's like, oh, a loved one passes away and you get £1,000 compensation.
or like you get £1,000, but it's all of counterfeit money and you go to jail or some shit like that. Yeah.
So it's the same wish, but the way in which it goes wrong is different and distinct. Because I believe that they're often used like interchangeably, but there is a distinct difference between the monkey's paw and the genie's wish.
Yeah, I always saw it as, like, as I say, the monkey's paw, something bad is guaranteed to happen.
Whereas the genie's wish is about being careful. That's really being careful what you wish for.
Mm-hmm.
Think about what it is you actually want. And that's usually the lesson with like genie's wish stories of really, really think about what it is you're asking for. It's like, oh, I wish for like, £1 million. It's like, are you sure that's exactly what you want? Are you not going to specify how you want to get the £1 million?
Mm-hmm. Just £1 million of flesh. Just...
Yeah. You got to specify.
Yeah.
And that's how it works. But then we got to, like I say, let's pick one more, Lucas. And you said you noticed the mask, yes?
I think it was called like the Haunted Mask, the first one.
But it's like, I think like, because there's 62 of these things in the original series, like 200 and odd, like, overall. So let's end with just the blurb for the Haunted Mask. Face to face with a nightmare. How ugly is Carly Beth's Halloween mask? It's so ugly that it almost scared her little brother to death. So terrifying that even her friends are totally freaked out by it. It's the best Halloween mask ever. It's everything Carly Beth hoped it would be, and more. Maybe too much more, because Halloween is almost over, and she's still wearing that mask.
Oh, so it's the classic, you put it on, but you can't ever take it back off.
Yep.
I think I vaguely remember that one being an episode on the TV show.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to, like, just quickly, just as I scroll down, just describe a couple of the covers, because, I mentioned like horror being a very experimental genre. We've talked about a couple of just pretty basic horror tropes, like a wish goes wrong, something in the basement, the haunted house, there is like, a spooky mask, like people trying to take you into an alternate dimension. There's just, we'll read some titles out here. Why I'm Afraid of Bees, and the cover just a little kid turning into a bee.
Yeah.
There's Deep Trouble, the prequel to Deep Trouble 2. It's a shark, pretty classic. Go Eat Worms, which is about like scary worms emerging from everywhere. Ghost Beach, about a haunted beach. Phantom of the Auditorium, which is a the teen lit take on Phantom of the Opera.
Right, yeah.
My Hairiest Adventure, Wolfman Story. A Night in Terror Tower, The Cuckoo Clock of Doom. It Came from Beneath the Sink, Night of the Living Dummy 2, The Barking Ghost, so Cujo for kids. Horror at Camp Jelly Jam, so that's like, just Friday the 13th for kids. And that's the funny thing, looking back as an adult, I'm like, I can see this is just like Horror at Camp Jelly Jam, Friday the 13th, but for little kids.
And I'm just going to put up the image for like the Haunted Mask, and that's the one that like I remember personally, like when I scrolled through the first 62, that's the image that stood out to me.
Yeah. We have like Bad Hair Day, about a spooky rabbit. Egg Monsters from Mars, about aliens. The Beast from the East. Say Cheese and Die Again. Ghost Camp, How to Kill a Monster. Legend of the Lost Legend. Attack of the Jack-O-Lanterns. Vampire Breath, Calling All Creeps. Beware the Snowman. How I Learned to Fly. Chicken Chicken. Don't Go to Sleep, The Blob That Ate Everybody. The Curse of Camp Cold Lake. My Best Friend is Invisible. Deep Trouble 2, the one that I've got. The Haunted School. Werewolf Skin. I Live in Your Basement. And finally, Monster Blood 4.
That sounds like one of those things where, in The Simpsons, when they're taking the piss out of like jokes of like, oh, what are you going to see today? Like, oh, we're going to go play like violent video games and watch Monster Blood 4.
Bone Storm. Give me Bone Storm.
Bone Storm. Yeah.
But yeah. Like, what a series!
How many Monster Blood do you think is like in the new series? Do you think that R.L. Stein's got into like Monster Blood 30?
I think they should just do a bring it back.
Are there more Monster Bloods or Final Fantasy games? That's the question.
Probably quite a few Monster Bloods.
Probably is at this point.
Yeah, well, just great series. Like, it encourages kids to
Yes.
read. It gave me my first foray into horror and spooky things. It encouraged a love of reading and discussing media. That, remains in myself to this day.
Yeah,
I'm just scrolling down all like the covers, and the covers are like they're so bad, but in a way that makes them good because they're so 90s.
yeah, and I just loved all of those ones. Like, remember you've got that book down in the corner called Z-Rex.
Z-Rex,
You
yes,
love Z-Rex. Just those ones where it's got like the big like 3D like raised up artwork on the front. I remember some of the Goosebumps books being like that, and that always stood out to me on the shelf, and that's why I picked out some of the Goosebumps books I did. Just the artwork and the fact that the artwork was like this like 3D sculpted piece as well.
It's just the text as well. Like the Goosebumps text is like so iconic.
It's really good, yeah.
It's super strong. Like very simple, but its simplicity is part of its draw.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like that's Goosebumps. Let us know your favorite Goosebumps book in the comments.
Yeah, 100%. Just we will get to Naked John Cena very, very soon. But we just take a quick break before and call, don't we?
We do. The final one, I just checked. Yeah, last week. It's called Goblin Monday.
Goblin Monday.
Just Goblin Monday.
That's the thing is, that reminds me of what it shouldn't be a Monday, but when people are like, oh, I'm gonna like go Goblin mode over the weekend, and just like, oh, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth come out, I'm gonna go Goblin mode, and it's just like, it's time to sit down, pull the curtains, and just snack and play Final Fantasy and not worry about responsibilities.
The fact that Go Goblin mode was like the dictionary's like official term of the year last year.
Was it?
Yeah, it was the word of the year, going Goblin mode.
Oh dear.
Legendary.
Yeah, and I wish that I could just go Goblin mode right now and play Final Fantasy. But I've got work to do, Carl.
Mate, it's just turned into One Piece. I'm
Don't
60 hours in, and it turns into One Piece. I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
Oh dear. But yeah, we'll take a quick break for a moment. I just need to run the toilet quickly. And Carl, I don't know if you need to take a quick break.
No, I'm good. I can stay here. I'll keep an eye on chat for you.
You can keep an eye on chat, so I'll just be like gone away for a moment. But yeah, keep an eye on chat for us, and we'll be back in a minute properly to talk. There we go. And Carl, kick us back off with a bit of housekeeping then.
Yes, so we've just covered my wiki entry, and as a reminder of what we discussed at the start, if you like listening to this in parts or just have a bad memory like myself and Lucas, you can go down to the Discord linked in the description below to vote on which wiki you think won this week. Obviously, after listening to which wiki Lucas brought with him this week, you can also find myself on the socials link below, and indeed on Twitch at twitch.tv/Karlswood. The same can be said for Lucas, who streams 3 times a week, and it is Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, yes, for yourself?
It is indeed 10 p.m. UK time, roughly, which normally ends up being about 10:15 because I'm bad with timekeeping, but we say 10.
Like, so you do the is it the Irish exit they call it? Of like leaving half an hour after. It takes half an hour to say goodbye.
Oh no, the Irish exit is when you just walk out without saying anything. That's what I usually do on like nights out.
So I know there's a term for like when it takes you a long time to leave. Like you say, I'm going to leave now and spend 15 minutes saying goodbye.
No, the Irish goodbye is just like walking out without any notice and no one knows you're gone.
So the way that I do it then.
Yeah, that's literally how I do it when I'm like on nights out and stuff. I'm like, if I've had enough, it's just like, if I'm not with anyone else, just walk away.
It's like, what, there's a 24-hour McDonald's in town, let's go. Yes, you can find myself and Lucas on Twitch and on social medias, or again, all found below. Vote for the Wiki Weekends, that you thought, or the Wiki entry you thought worked best. Subscribe, all that good stuff. And is there any more housekeeping we need to do?
I don't think so, other than just like, maybe re-mentioning for people that were not here during the intro, just like next week we're doing an X-Men 97 theme podcast. So remember to like let us know in the Discord or in the comments of just which X-Men are your favorites to maybe go check the pages on for the 97 show. And yeah, and after that we are doing Godzilla versus Kong for the podcast after on the 27th, and I'm going to be doing a Godzilla wiki, and Carl's going to be doing some kind of Kong wiki.
Just the gorilla slide tech. Let's go.
Hell goddamn yes. Yeah, I will preface just like a little bit of behind the scenes, looking behind the camera. Looking behind the curtains, not behind the camera. I guess it is behind the camera with this.
Little inside baseball here.
It is indeed. The reason why I picked this topic for this week was literally just, I'm trying to think of what would make a good thumbnail, because I have to make them in advance before we've done the podcast. Whereas, like, at least, I don't really need to think about the thumbnail normally, but when we're scheduling the live podcast now, I have to make a thumbnail in advance rather than afterwards.
Yes.
So this entire thing was just what might make a good thumbnail, and eventually I came to the idea of like, well, John Cena just appeared naked on like the stage of the Oscars. So
it's the best moment of the Oscars. I only saw that just out of context clip of him like shuffling across the stage, and it's like costume design. It's just like, okay.
Yeah, it was great, and it was obviously one of those most talked about moments of the Oscars, and they did a good job making a moment that people might actually pay attention to if they're not religiously watching the Oscars like I tend to not.
I didn't even know it aired. I didn't even know about the Oscars until I saw people complaining about the Oscars.
Of course, yeah, the classic. But at least sometimes fun moments come out of it, like that John Cena bit. And yeah, like a couple of people mentioned earlier, of like people having a bit of a backlash and stuff to it of like, they're just humiliating John Cena. It's like, fuck off. John Cena's always been in on the bit. The amount of shit that he's done over the years, like he just leans into it, and that's why I love him more and more the more I like see him do this kind of shit. He just doesn't care.
It's more so if I look like that, I'd walk around naked.
I'd find an excuse to be on stage naked, yeah. Oh god, this huge buff John Cena.
So you know that bit in Scrubs where like it's JD breaks up with Elliot, and she dates like the younger guy who's really fit, and he's like he injures himself and he just takes his shirt off and goes, do you need this? And he's just got a six pack. That'd be like me every day.
Oh god, yeah. But no, I decided that after thinking that might make an interesting thumbnail to look up the Academy Awards. And there are some interesting things to talk about with the subject, so yeah.
Yeah, there's also like a lot of like interesting records.
Yeah.
Like some of them are more embarrassing than others. Of like the first Native American woman to be nominated for an Oscar was like Lily Gladstone this year, right?
There's a couple like there are some moments like that which are on the wiki page and covered.
Like historic firsts that happen way later than you'd expect. It's like
yeah, there are some surprising things like that, and it's going all the way back to 1929 when the first Academy Awards were held. So you'd think it might have not taken them nearly 100 years to do shit like that.
Also, as well, it's worth pointing out that those initial Academy Awards were not great.
Right.
Like they basically just a thing of like just Hollywood wanted to wank itself off and no one went. I think it was like 20 people went and it was over in like 10 minutes.
I mean, the first half of the sentence, I was like, what's changed? Hollywood still just wants to wank itself off at the Oscars.
I remember like the exact moment I stopped caring about the Oscars is when it was pointed out to me that almost if you want to get a Best Picture winner, all you really need to do is just make a film about Hollywood. And it's like, Argo, La La Land. The Artist, La La Land. Just make a film about how great films are.
Yeah, and
because
it's one of those of like the classic argument of like Oscar bait movies every single year, and it's just you can make a movie about Hollywood or you can make movies about atrocities, and generally speaking, they're gonna win Oscars.
Yep.
Look at fucking Oppenheimer.
Yep.
It's like Christopher Nolan's great, but Oppenheimer is just about blowing the fuck up of like innocent people.
Like the other guy who built the atomic bomb felt really bad about it.
Yeah. It's like, yep. There's a reason why specifically Christopher Nolan's like catalogue of great films, this is the one that happened to win an Oscar.
There's also like a lot of politics when it comes to the Oscars of people feel like when they deserve an Oscar.
And I think the one a lot of people bring up is like, or two actually, Martin Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio's Oscars.
Yeah,
of like
it's still wild. Yeah,
kind of like lifetime achievement Oscars almost.
Yeah, like the fact that Martin Scorsese has one Oscar to his name. It's really weird to think she think you'd have more, given that like you did like Godfather,
You'd think it
like
wasn't for
Raging Bull.
like the fucking Departed. The Departed. It's like, come on.
It's like I think I saw the statistic of Billie Eilish has more Oscars than Martin Scorsese does.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the statistic I told you, isn't it? Of like Katy Perry's got more number ones than the Beatles.
Yeah, wild.
It's one of those things you think, wait, how the Beatles? Like what? Like wait, what?
Yeah, that one broke my brain a little bit. And we'll get on to the history here, Carl. The first Academy Awards presentation was held on 16th of May 1929, a private dinner function at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel with an audience of about 270 people. And the post-awards party was held at the Mayfair Hotel. The cost of guest tickets for that night's ceremony was $5 or $85 at 2020 prices.
Yeah.
So imagine just going now and paying $85 to go hang out with like all of Hollywood's favorite people.
Well, that's the thing. They invited Hollywood royalty, and none of them turned up. Because I think that's like the criticism of the Oscars as well. There's so many categories that should exist but don't, or there's so many categories that are critical to film but don't get the prestige of, say, Best Actor. It's like why is
comedies.
Best Actor? Yeah, like why is Best Actor the most prestigious award there, or Best Actor Actress? Why is it not cinematography?
Yeah.
Why is it not best? Why is it not writing? Like, the actor's good, but the best actor can't make a good script good.
Obviously,
Lighting.
like Best Director does normally get pegging above the Best Actors.
But even then, like a director isn't making the film alone.
No, exactly.
Like,
yeah.
And they have things like assistant directors, and big films normally have like multiple ADs and cinematographers and lighting people and producers and script supervisors, and it's like a whole team. And the fact that they do a second Oscars that never gets talked about.
Didn't even know there was one.
The technical Oscars. The technical achievements always get done beforehand, and no fucker sits there.
But there are two other good things that this year's Oscars brought us, Carl.
Which are?
Godzilla winning an Oscar.
For the first... That's wild to think, it's like, what, 70 years of Godzilla films?
A ridiculous amount of time where Godzilla's been like eligible but has not won an Oscar. But I just love the idea now that we get to just Photoshop images of actual Godzilla with an Oscar. It's like, yeah. But also just, did you see the other clip where they filmed the dog from one of the movies and got like the little dog hands to clap and just put that in?
Yep.
I was like, I was annoyed that they said that the dog couldn't fucking turn up to the Oscars, but at least they put in that little clip. Yeah.
It's you can see Hollywood desperately trying to appeal to a younger generation of people who just do not give a fuck.
Of like,
especially when
just leaning into those memeable moments that are going to get shared online. The two things that I saw, the dog and the John Cena thing.
Especially when you consider as well, like, you might think, how do you do the Oscars? Is that noted there? Where it's a group of like 100 people, invite only, and they're all old, white, and male.
Yeah.
The average age is like 60. 80% of them are men. And 95% of them are white. And they don't even have to watch every film.
Yeah, they don't, do they? Yeah.
Nope. And their reasoning is not ever made public.
Yeah, it does say here.
When you realize...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
But when you think about that, the fuck should I care about these people's opinion?
There's like less than 10,000 people, and just they did get to decide what the best things... It's the same with like how people treat the Game Awards as like really prestigious, and the only reason it's quote-unquote prestigious is because Jeff Keighley tells you it is.
But it's also as well, it's like, what the fuck do those people know about like direction?
I mean, specifically when it comes to the Oscars, yeah.
Yeah, like, especially when it's like all these technical awards. But yeah, continue.
But yeah, it does say here that the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, AMPAS, a professional honorary organization, maintains a voting membership of 9,487 as of 2022. So yeah, it's just all of them must be invited to join by the Board of Governors on behalf of the Academy Branch Executive Committees. Membership eligibility may be achieved by a competitive nomination, or an existing member may submit a name based on other significant contributions to the field of motion pictures.
So it's just an all boys club.
Yeah, literally, it's just no one gets in here unless we want you in here. So do you really think that they're inviting a bunch of like diverse minds and people with different levels of expertise and different fields of expertise?
No, it's their friends.
It's their
And
friends.
that's the thing that's become more prevalent in recent years. I think it's like Oscars So White trended like 3 years on the bounce.
Mm-hmm.
And like every single category, there was not like a single person of color nominated for like any of like the major prestigious awards, even though there've been multiple films that realistically could have had you know, a good standing against those movies.
And there are some milestones listed here, Carl.
These are the best ones. These are always so embarrassing.
Well, yeah, like the the 1957 Academy Awards. They are the 29th ceremony. The best foreign language film category was introduced, and it is now known as the best international feature film.
That's such a bullshit thing. Best international film. It's like there's like
so again, just Hollywood wanking specifically Hollywood off.
It's like it's basically doing like movies other, and it's every other fucking country on earth.
Everything that isn't like Hollywood movies got categorized down into just
other
movie. Well, best
like the whole thing
foreign language film, so I guess the English movies would count. But like most of the world completely disregarded. And then even when they weren't, after 29 years, they got put into one category.
Just, you know, others.
And like until then, foreign language films had been honoured with the Special Achievement Award.
Yeah, so it's so you don't get a real Oscar. And I just got his guy's name now, Bong Joon-ho, the legendary just burn that he threw about like people saying like foreign language. I was like, Parasite was a big thing of it was a foreign language film that won just Best Picture.
Well,
and just during his speech, just said, once you get over the literal inch-high hurdle of reading subtitles, an entire world of film will open up to you.
That is one that I was going to bring up later, but yeah. On February 9th, 2020, Parasite became the first foreign language film to win Best Picture at the 92nd Academy Awards. So and for 91 years, they didn't think that like any foreign film was better than an English movie.
So during that's when you had like, you know, the reign of like Akira Kurosawa, like making all his films.
Mm-hmm.
You had all like, you know, the Italian directors making that's it. I don't know off the top of my head.
Well, like
I don't watch many foreign films since I stopped studying film.
Think about like the stereotype of the French film, the French foreign film, and like how Americans always like stereotype that as like, oh look at all these like arty fartsy French foreign films, and it's like, do you mean good movies?
And not a single one had won.
Yeah. And yeah,
well, they might have done, but they weren't nominated for Best Picture. Because you can't have Best Picture, you get Best Foreign Language Picture.
Not Best Real Picture, though, Carl. They don't count as real movies. Like, 92 years.
For them to, like, you know, for a film in a language other than English to win.
And don't get me fucking started about, like, the treatment of, like, animated movies. Like, all of the Studio Ghibli movies that should have been winning shit.
Yeah.
Other than just Best Animated Movie. Again, just an entire like category of movies just subsided to one award.
Yeah. So we're gonna make an entire award category. It's like when they try to do, I think it was like they try to make the special category of like most popular film, and they very suspiciously did that in the year that Black Panther came out.
Right.
So they make a new award specifically so they can give it to Black Panther, so they don't have to put it in the Best Picture award.
The real awards. Yeah.
Well, they try to make it like most profitable picture.
And then, going back a little bit in time here, Carl.
Probably with more firsts.
Probably the thing that, you know, John Cena was referencing, i.e. definitely the thing John Cena was referencing, probably the most widely seen streak in history was 34-year-old Robert Opel, who streaked across the stage of the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion in Los Angeles, flashing a peace sign on national US television at the 46th Academy Awards in 1974. Bemused host David Niven quipped, "Isn't it fascinating to think that probably the only laugh that man will ever get in his life is by stripping off and showing his shortcomings?" That's a pretty good line.
That's classy. To come up with that on the spot as well, that's classy.
Like, do you think he just had that one in the bank, just waiting for a moment in his life where a streaker came across?
That's pretty classy, is that?
It is, and later evidence arose suggesting that Oprah's appearance was facilitated as a publicity stunt by the show's producer, Jack Haley Jr.
Well, there's been loads of stuff like that, hasn't there? There's obviously all the controversy around the Will Smith slap. There's a bunch of theories that was like an engineered publicity stunt to get more views, which that might sound silly. One of the most famous things that happened at the Oscars before that was the selfie.
Yes, of course, the most liked selfie of all time.
Which was a product placement by Samsung, I believe.
And yeah, it does say here, Carl. Robert Metzler, the show's business manager, believed the incident had been planned in some way because during the dress rehearsal, Niven had asked Metzler's wife to borrow a pen so he could write down the famous line, which was thus not the ad-lib it appeared to be. So that's why it was such a good line.
It'd been written.
Pre-written and pre-planned. So it wasn't a good line off the top of his head after all. Oh dear. Yeah. Mentioned, the snubs of animated movies. 2002, the 74th Academy Awards presented the first Academy Award for Best Animated Feature.
Again, they had to make an entire thing just to give it awards because we don't want them to be put on the real movies. We can't have it near the real movies because, animation's for children.
Yeah.
Even though it's not. And I think that's one of the things like Miyazaki has never gone to an Academy Awards, even when he gets nominated. And because every single year, the animated category, when they're announcing it, the host always makes the same joke. These are for children.
Oh, right. Great.
And it's like,
fantastic. It's just, yeah, of course. Of course. Oh, dear. And yeah, I've just wanted to know about this as well, of
yes.
It's a little bit long-winded, so bear with. But, the ownership of Oscar statuettes. I thought this was quite interesting.
Yeah, you don't technically own them.
Yeah. Prior to 1950, so, a good 70 years ago, Oscar statuettes were and remain the property of the recipient.
Yep.
But since then, the statuettes have legally been encumbered by the requirement that the statue be first offered for sale back to the Academy for $1.
$1 single, yes.
So if you ever want to give it up, they basically have right of refusal first and can buy it back for $1 if you don't want it.
Yeah, and that's coming to there's been some pretty annoying stories to hear about when it's people trying to sell their Oscars and the Academy's well, no, it'll influence the prestige if just the average man, woman, or child on the street can buy one and then own it.
Yeah, and they've got the list down here of a few examples of when that happened. But it does say that if a winner refuses to agree to this stipulation, then the Academy keeps the statuette. So if they don't agree to that, they don't even get it in the first place.
They're not allowed to, yes. And they also say as well, they also don't like when people turn the Oscars down because obviously, it looks real bad. And you had a couple of actors who did that in the past.
Right, fair.
You had Marlon Brando famously just did not give a fuck. Constantly, always just shat on his Oscars and then used one of his wins, I think, to send that Native American woman to talk about the plight of Native Americans. You know what? You can use my time. Just go up there and talk. And that's where you get the very telling story about John Wayne. Of the actor John Wayne was so incensed at the idea of a Native American woman talking about the plight of her people and the discrimination they face. He wanted to go on stage and physically beat her up.
Yeah.
It's fuck you, John Wayne. Burning
Absolutely. Just fuck off entirely. And Academy Awards predating this agreement, so pre-1950, have been sold in public auctions and private deals for six-figure sums.
Yep.
And obviously that's what they don't want, is people just grafting off a bunch of Academy Awards and people just having them randomly sit on private collectors' shelves. It's no, these are meant to be either for the Academy or for the the person that won the award.
Yep.
And there are a few examples of people trying to get rid of them. In 1989, Michael Todd's grandson tried to sell Todd's Best Picture Oscar for his 1956 production of Around the World in 80 Days to a movie prop collector. The Academy earned enforcement of its statuette contract by gaining a permanent injunction against the sale.
It's just one of those things where it's like, fuck you, Hollywood.
Of just, well, yeah, just fuck it. Someone inherited an Oscar,
It's
and
mine now, yeah?
it's like, okay, cool. Well, my granddad gave me this Oscar, and it's not my Oscar. I guess I could sell it to like a prop collector. Nope, we're gonna come down and just rain the Academy down on your presence and just stop you. Put an injunction in on you. Like, fuck you.
Yeah.
And all they're gonna do is like either melt it down or keep it in like a fucking room somewhere that no one gives a shit about.
Yeah. But they need to maintain the prestige that the Oscar
And
gives off.
that's what a lot of the Oscars is still running off, right? Is that like that weird prestige that they have themselves built up and managed to maintain over the years to some degree, but I think nowadays a lot of people are just smelling those farts.
That's what a lot of it is, yeah. That's why I said like the easiest ways to win an Oscar is just make a film about how great Hollywood is. Like I said, Argo, La La Land, and The Artist.
Yeah, and then in 1992, Harold Russell, co-signed his 1946 Oscar for Best Supporting Actor for The Best Years of Our Lives to auction to raise money for his wife's medical expenses. Though the decision caused controversy, the first Oscar ever to be sold, passed to a private collector August 6, 1992, for $60,500, which is roughly $126,200 today. Yep. Russell defended his actions, saying, "I don't know why anyone would be critical. My wife's health is much more important than sentimental reasons. The movie will be here even if the Oscar isn't." And yeah, it's like, who gives a shit about this little statue? My wife is dying.
Yeah, who gives a fuck? Like Lucas, what's important though? Things. Things are what's important.
Little statues that say I did something.
A little golden statue that tells you how much better you are than other people. That was decided on by people you don't know, who weren't voted for, whose opinion doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And as well as opinion, they are not reflective of the rest of society.
And at very least, because they realised how much of a PR shit show that would be, presumably, at very least they didn't stop that sale going through.
Yeah.
Of just, oh, well, you're going to put an injunction against this sale, pay for my fucking wife's medical bills then.
And yeah, just in the background, I've been just looking at some classic Oscar snubs, unless there's a category in Wikipedia about just like films that considered to be snubs.
Well, I wanted to just go through this last one.
Yeah, I say I've got those in the background.
But then we can go through some snubs as well. As that's a fun discussion, looking back at some of the winners and stuff.
I was letting you know that I've like gone and found like a list of those in the background.
I do like discussing that. Yeah, it's really interesting seeing some of the decisions that were made in retrospect. In December 2011, Orson Welles' 1941 Oscar for Citizen Kane, which was the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay, was put up for auction. After his heirs won a 2004 court decision containing that Welles did not sign any agreement to return the statue to the Academy.
Yep, and it's mine now.
Yeah, on December 20th, 2011, it sold in an online auction for fuck my life. $861,542, which is about $1.12 million today.
To be fair, that's the only Oscar Citizen Kane won. And Citizen Kane's like Oscars thing was like a huge controversy. Like it's in this thing I've got here about being snubbed because the story behind that is Citizen Kane is partially about or inspired by a real guy who really didn't like that he was being parodied and used his power to have the films squashed. And he basically threatened to blackball anyone who voted for it.
Yeah.
Which, if anything, just brings into like question how, independent these like things are. If one guy who's mad can get what is universally agreed to be the greatest film ever made, not completely just off everyone's voting list.
And yeah, it's like somehow even the fucking Oscars decided Citizen Kane, like, you can get an award, sure.
You get one.
You get one. It's like, okay, nearly it's 80 years later or whatever, and people have decided like, oh, it's held up as like essentially the gateway into modern cinema.
It is the shorthand for greatest film. Like you just say Citizen Kane as shorthand for a good film. Like it is the Citizen Kane of this
Exactly.
like medium.
Yeah.
And it didn't win anything except for best original screenplay because one guy was salty that he was being made fun of.
And yeah,
He was able to influence all of Hollywood.
And if it was 1941, they said the agreement to have first right of refusal on sale was from 1950. So yeah, fuck you. He couldn't have signed that agreement because you didn't bring it in place for another 9 years.
Also, as well, like anyone's going to argue with like fucking Orson Welles.
Well, it's not obviously Orson Welles. It's like the estate of Orson Welles, isn't it?
Even still, like you're not going to argue that fucking dude or anything related to him.
Not nowadays.
It's like we represent Orson Welles. Oh shit, he does, yeah.
Yeah. And there are obviously a lot of criticisms and controversies around the Oscars that we've briefly mentioned, and there's like a few different paragraphs here that I'll just mention so that people are aware of it before we move on to the more formal conversation of just the snubs.
Yeah, just because this is why myself and Lucas don't really pay much attention to them, because why would I give a shit?
I think just the categories, like the like headers for each category say it all, of like accusations of commercialism, bias, a lack of diversity, miscategorization of actors, just symbolism, sentimentalization, recognition of like the streaming media films as well, or just lack thereof. And it's like, yeah, just a lot of, again, old white dudes mostly deciding that what they think matters.
Yeah.
And they nothing else.
Yeah. And what do old white dudes like? Other old white dudes.
And, people just wanking off Hollywood.
Yeah, because Lucas, they're the real heroes.
Yeah.
It's like Argo is a film about how filmmakers like save some like hostages.
Mm-hmm. How filmmakers save the day, Karl.
Yeah.
And it's just, basically just, I don't again, I always like the discussion around some of like the snubs or some of the fun moments happened. Like, it's inherently funny regardless of whether you like the Oscars or not, to watch John Cena just slowly sidle naked onto stage.
But yeah, it's as well, like, how often do you get literally almost every celebrity you're aware of in the same room at the same time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, it's one of those of just, it fuels way more bad than it does good. And I just think it's a load of bollocks anyway, because half the time, just the things that get awarded are just totally the wrong picks anyway, which Karl can let us know about.
Yeah, so we have here just like, this is parade.com, and so it's just a smattering of like famous snubs or things that are perceived to be snubs, and arguably the biggest one is Alfred Hitchcock, who never won a single Oscar, despite being inarguably one of the most famous directors of all time.
You could pretty much say, why do the Oscars not matter? And just say, Alfred Hitchcock never won one. End of discussion.
And he did win a Lifetime Achievement Award, which was largely seen as like, walking back that.
Mm-hmm.
And he very famously, when he was asked to go up on stage and say his speech, walked out and said, and I quote, "Thank you very much," and left.
Because it's just a slap in the face, right? It's just a reminder that, hey, you did all this great work and we never gave you any fucking recognition.
Yeah, we also have just like a couple of like big films that were nominated but didn't win. E.T. the Extraterrestrial.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yep. And it says here that, it only succeeded in the technical categories, which, even though the technical categories I think are important, are seen as being lesser, because it even says in this in this article, they only succeeded in the technical categories of best original score, effects, sound, and sound effects editing. And it's like the fact that even a this magazine website is like only technical. Oh, you mean the thing that allows film to exist?
Yeah, right, but the way that they present those awards and treat those awards gives them less meaning.
Yeah, and one of the things that makes this funny is Richard Attenborough later declared that it should have won Best Picture as well. Richard Attenborough was the guy who directed Gandhi, the film that won that year.
And again,
even he's like, E.T.'s a better film.
Even another example of just a typical, like, quote-unquote, Oscar bait movie. Not saying that any of those movies can't be good in their own right, but they are very specifically like made and even released around the right time to aim themselves at Oscar nominations.
Yeah, and then we have just another person who never won an award, John Hughes. If you don't recognise the name, he's the writer-director responsible for The Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Home Alone, and the National Lampoon's Vacation series, as well as Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. He never snared a single nomination for any of the movies listed, though he did
hell.
receive a special tribute after he died.
Yeah, of course he fucking did. Jesus Christ. Like, not to say that he didn't earn that, but like, oh yeah, well, we'll tell them after they died that we actually thought their movies were pretty good when we never nominated them.
Yeah, we have here Stanley Kubrick. Stanley Kubrick.
I mean, I have a lot of
Another
problems
name.
with like the way that he makes his movies, apparently, but Jesus Christ, yeah.
So if anyone is unfamiliar with Stanley Kubrick's like filmography, just a smattering here: The Shining, Doctor Strangelove, 2001: A Space Odyssey, Full Metal Jacket.
Like, you
The
don't need
only
to say many of those movies when it's those movies.
He was nominated 4 times but never won. His lone consolation prize, a special effects Oscar for 2001: A Space Odyssey.
The fact that that's it, like 2001: Space Odyssey and The Shining, still two movies that are talked about to this day with such great esteem.
Yep, it's just the fact you can say Kubrick never won one, or he got like the consolation one in like a category. Because I don't think special effects is a lesser category. The Academy certainly does, though.
It does, yeah. But yeah, like Hitchcock, Orson Welles, and Kubrick all getting like massively snubbed. Scorsese only getting one. Like,
Yep.
there's so many examples. Yeah.
Speaking of Scorsese, like Goodfellas. Obviously Taxi Driver and Raging Bull it mentions here, but like Goodfellas lost that year to Dances with Wolves, which is just Pocahontas.
Yeah.
It's not even an original film.
God, that's rough.
And then we have another one, Brokeback Mountain, which resulted in the presenter Jack Nicholson mouthing the word "wow" when the winner that year, Crash, won.
Oh, that was the Crash year. Yep. Oh god, it won over Brokeback.
And one of the things you'll notice when it comes to these is it's usually the film that won that year. No fucker talks about it anymore.
Yeah. A lot of the time.
Oh, another actor who never won one, Lucas. Charlie Chaplin. One of the pioneers of the medium.
Speaking of which,
he got an Oscar for score.
Chaplin the movie Academy Awards. What year was that? So 1992 Academy Awards nominations. Because like I remember someone mentioning like Robert Downey Jr. just won an Academy Award. And it's like, oh, did people were just bringing up like apparently the like nominations that he was against for like best actor that year were just ridiculous.
Let's have a look then. And then just while you go with that, the last one we have here is Saving Private Ryan. And it lost to Shakespeare in Love.
Oh, fucking hell.
And that's the thing. Shakespeare in Love, probably a pretty decent film. Is it Saving Private Ryan?
Yeah.
Is it like Spielberg, like one of Spielberg's best like movies?
And yeah, I've just got up here the 1993 Academy Awards.
Okay, go.
The nominations for Best Actor was Robert Downey Jr. for Chaplin as Charlie Chaplin.
And that film is great. Robert Downey Jr. is fucking phenomenal in that role.
Yeah, but it's up against Clint Eastwood for Unforgiven.
Okay.
Stephen Ray for The Crying Game, and Denzel Washington for Malcolm X.
That's a stack shit.
That's pretty fucking rough. Yeah, like
that is a rough. Actually, is Denzel's not won, has he? I don't think Denzel's won.
I'm not sure.
Double check. Has Denzel Washington won an Oscar? He must have done, right? Like Denzel's got a one.
You'd think so, right?
Supporting actor. Yeah, Training Day. Fuck yeah. Yeah, he won for Training Day. Fuck yeah. Won
Best Supporting Actor for Glory and Best Actor for Training Day.
Fuck yeah, Training Day.
But yeah.
Okay, good. At least Denzel's won.
That's the thing. It's just there are so many like times where there are great movies every year, but just the amount of times where like, oh man, Robert Downey Jr. like got snubbed, and it's like, but did he? Because like Unforgiven, I could see why Clint Eastwood might win that one, like, and then did it say who the winner was that year? I think it might have been Al Pacino.
I think it was Al Pacino, yes.
Yeah, it was Al Pacino who won it for Scent of a Woman. And it's like, when you're up against, like, that stacked a cast of people, it's like, yeah, I feel bad for Robert Downey Jr. He's got his Oscar now.
He's got one. Well, that's the thing, is that it feels like, we give him one for Oppenheimer. So you gave him it for that?
I mean,
Really?
that's the thing, is I haven't watched Oppenheimer because I don't want to watch just a depressing movie about murdering a lot of people. But yeah, I heard it was good. I heard the performances were, like, really phenomenal in it. But
That's a film that should win for technical categories.
Hmm.
And here's the thing: technical categories, it's not a bad thing. The industry thinks it is, but technical categories, absolutely, like, that is a thing that should be celebrated. Like Nolan inventing new camera techniques and special effects techniques. That is a thing that should be celebrated, and winning an award for that should be no less prestigious than getting Best Picture. But it is.
Yeah. And I think it's difficult as well to present an award in that way. Like, I do think that they snub it on purpose and in a bad way, but I do also think that it's a lot easier to just be like, hey, this one person was good at this one thing, right? Than like, an entire team of people were really good in, like, we mentioned Godzilla -1 winning, like, the best effects. And
it's so frustrating though, because, like, they're the building blocks that make the film what it is.
Yeah, the fact that they don't have any recognition for stunt work, yeah, that's a good point.
It's so stupid that there's not a stunt one. There should be a stunt one. Like, best stunt actor, best stunt that year.
Yeah, just, like, best performed stunt, something like that.
I think there needs to be, like, specific Oscars for, like, best speech. So you can have, like, not best actor, best speech. Like, what was the best best line delivery?
Was it the Oscars that had, like, that fan voted best moment thing? Was it the Oscars that did that?
I think it was the Oscars introduced the fan vote one because they didn't want to get to Black Panther.
Right, but, like, is that the same thing that the Flash won? But, like, Zack Snyder's Justice League, the Flash running moment that looks so bad.
Yeah, because they just put out an award and just Snyder fans just voted to get the best looking special effect that year. Yeah, stunt actors should absolutely be celebrated, as should, like, the other technical categories should also get the same level of prestige. And I think there needs. So I guess to end on, is there any, like, categories you think should exist? Because one for me would be, like, best line reading or, like, best speech.
Yeah, it's hard to categorize that, right? Of, like, what, like, the best scene, best performance in a single scene.
I just think, like, just the best speech, like, just the best singular moment of acting.
But then you could pick apart, like, what does a speech mean? What does, like, a moment of acting mean?
Yeah. But I do think, like, there should be something to recognize an individual moment in film.
Where, like, not necessarily the entire film or entire performance was phenomenal, but, like, this one thing that, like, you need to go watch this 2-minute performance because it was phenomenal. Yeah.
Like, you don't necessarily need to have, like, the best, like, lighting, but, like, maybe the light is a bad example. Like, best stunt would be another one. Like, maybe there might be more bigger bombastic stunts in other movies, but what would be the single best one scene?
See,
and just every year that'd be won by a foreign film. Which would be some fucking Bollywood film no one's seen that had a guy, like, fucking helicoptering a horse around or something.
Just most bombastic moment, and it just goes to, like, fucking, some random Bollywood film where they, like, fly. Remember that one that I always remember was the war movie where a bunch of people turn into, like, a big ball and get fired in, like, a ball of shields onto the top of the castle and then just perfectly unravel into an army. I'm like, shit like that should get an award.
You see, you have, like, best original screenplay, best original stunt, or best original moment, or, like, camera angle, or best original way a scene was filmed.
Yeah,
I got seen, like, the Raid 2 where they just gave, like, they put a camera through a car.
Like, most inventive use of camera or something like
most
that.
innovative shot, most innovative scene.
Yeah, like, stuff like that would be really cool.
A category for something that was, like, has never been seen before, like, pioneered a new technique. It's like Nolan would win a lot of those, I imagine.
Yeah, but I presume the argument for that is that there might not be 5 solid moments to pick every year of, like, new techniques.
Really, out of like the 8,000 films that are made
That's what
every
they
year.
would argue. I didn't say was true,
Yeah,
but they don't want to go watch all 8,000 movies, Carl.
exactly. Yes.
Um, but yeah, I think for me, I don't know all of the categories because I don't ever watch it. But if there isn't one, I think there should be one for like voice work
Voice work would be a good one. Yeah, best voiceover.
because they, as far as I'm aware, they don't have like anything to recognize voice actors specifically.
There might be like best like animated feature role or something
Maybe
and
again, I
maybe it's
don't
like,
know the entire list of categories, but
or it might be an award at like one of the Golden Globes or something like that, or the Emmys.
yeah, but that's always something that I think again along the side of animation that just gets completely pushed to the side of you get one fucking award. It's like,
Yeah.
well, if you are gonna do that, at least have like best voice acting in animated films, right? Like
Yeah.
best performance in an animated picture, rather than just because realistically, some performances in animated work could be good enough to go up against best actor and best supporting actor,
Yeah,
but they don't treat it that way.
Imagine like the uproar there'd be if like an animated movie won over
Mm-hmm.
an animated voice work won over like an acting performance. Like the old heads would not like that.
Exactly, yeah. So if you're gonna not give them a chance to ever compete, at least let them compete in their own category. At very, very least.
They also as well need more categories for genres because there's I think the famous one is Get Out, which because horror movies tend to not do well at the Oscars, they put that forward as like best comedy.
Mm.
And like Jordan Peele was like, sure, it's funny. There's some funny moments in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a comedy, and they put it forward as like best comedy because they didn't know where to put it.
And because I guess they just see Jordan Peele and go comedy, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like maybe Jordan Peele doesn't just make comedies. I don't know if everyone's seen those movies, but
It's more because they don't want horror movies. Like horror movies are like one of those down upon genres. Like horror, sci-fi, comedies are generally looked down upon as genres, and action movies as well.
Yeah.
And they tend to win a lot of like technical categories if they win at all.
And that's the thing again, it's just a complete bias towards a certain genre and a certain type of movie, filmed in a certain way, of a certain length, normally about something that's very serious.
Starring white people.
Yeah, exactly. Normally, yeah. And it's just the fact that there's like literal notable moments of like, yeah, it took until 2020 for a non-English speaking movie to get recognition.
Like the entire history of cinema.
Yeah. Like nearly 100 years of just not acknowledging foreign film.
No, they give it its own special category.
Yeah, they got one special category of like, so we don't really care.
I think they should do that with like foreign film categories. Which is like best American film, and just every year give it to like Shrek or something.
Just every year is just Shrek 1.
Yeah, I think as well, like another one, just like encourage interaction would be like most talked about moment. So again, not necessarily the best moment in a film, but just one that was like captured the public attention and zeitgeist, like the "I'm Just Ken" song.
That was what I had in my head when you just said that. Is like, yeah, that captured at least a few like months worth of the internet. Just everyone was talking about the "I'm Just Ken" thing.
And I know like the old heads are like, no, that's not what we're celebrating here. It's like, well, you make a film to get a message out or to like say something, and if you have a genuine enthusiastic response from people, that is something that should be celebrated. Like, that is genuine earnest enthusiasm from fans of what you've created.
And like that thing, they know that because they put a "I'm Just Ken" performance in the Oscars.
Of course, yeah. And I think that's something that should be celebrated, like maybe just like most talked about moment. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a memeable.
Uh-oh. Carl has died. Well, and
your camera's froze.
Oh, your camera froze for me.
There we go.
We all back. We all good.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's one of those of it doesn't necessarily have to be this big prestigious moment or anything like that. It almost memeable moment even. Just what was something that really captured audience's attention in that past year?
Just resulted in like a genuine enthusiasm for the medium.
The best award goes to best marketing for Barbenheimer.
I think that would be another one as well. Best marketing, or It doesn't have to be the biggest campaign; it's to be the most innovative.
Mm-hmm.
I like best trailer.
Yeah.
Best trailer could work.
Just like trailer making is an art in its own right. Like
It is.
you have to literally make something that grabs people's attention and tells enough of a story to make people want to go watch the film without spoiling it necessarily.
I also think as well, best poster should be one because like the joke is that all movie posters look shit now.
Mm-hmm. The floating
they used to be like,
thing, yeah.
They used to be like handcrafted piece of art in their own right. Now they're not. Maybe that'd be a way to like bring back like actual crafted film posters.
Think about the first three, for example, that popped into my head when you said that, like Star Wars, The Godfather, and Pulp Fiction. They are three like iconic movie posters that probably when I said that, a lot of people are able to immediately think of what picture I'm thinking of in my head.
I think that should be one.
And yeah, nowadays you just get like, oh, look at Avengers, and there's 40 faces just floating in nothing.
Just CGI'd, yeah.
Yeah.
I think best is there an Oscar for like best newcomer? Because I know that's like a category. That's the category you get in like the MTV awards and stuff like that. But I think like best newcomer would be a good one as well because there's often that like hesitancy to give like a new or young or emerging actor an Oscar.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like a good way to like to avoid that would be best newcomer. It's like best debut role for an actor or actress. I believe like best newcomer is probably something you see at like the MTV Movie Awards or something. It feels like a more like commercially minded.
Not specifically for newcomer. No, there's like best supporting actors that. It's kind of wild, like how early on they kind of settled on everything because in the 40s they added like. Well, 39 they added best visual effects. Then 40 was original screenplay. 41.
The fact the screenplay didn't get a fucking Oscar
for like 11 years. Yeah.
The script.
41 was documentary short film. 43 was documentary feature film. 47 was international feature film, which we mentioned. 48 was best costume design. And then since 1948, the only 3 awards added are in 1981, best makeup and hairstyling. 2001 was best animated film. And then in 2025, next year, we'll have best casting. So it's going to go nearly a century without awarding the casting of a movie.
I think that's good as well because, casting is really, really important. Like again, there are so many important facets of making a film.
Yeah,
and the fact that there's some aspects that just do not get any play whatsoever, and some that get within the Oscars themselves get ignored. Like they do technical awards off camera.
Yeah, and I think American Church saying best stunt and stuntman or woman should be a category or two, and it's like I think I'd prefer it to just be like non-gendered best stunt.
Yeah. Most impressive stunt.
Yeah, I think obviously I don't want to downplay the role of stunt people across a whole movie. But I think that would be a nice, easy way to be. Here's 5 short clips of the coolest fucking stunts we've got. Which one is the best? Because going into best stunt performance overall, then it's really difficult to get an eye of how much were they doing
individually
in
involved,
the film,
yeah.
individually, how much did they have an influence on it all? There's so many times where, for example, Tom Cruise says, "I do everything in the movie." He still has stunt people.
Yeah, and it's that thing as well of best stunt overall would allow you to just single out a single moment from a film.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to be celebrated. But yeah, it's an interesting conversation.
Yeah,
and
it
has been wild in the last couple of years to just see how desperate the Oscars is for relevance with people around our age and younger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is exactly why you're seeing just John Cena naked on stage, just because, well, that'll go on social media.
We need people to talk about this.
And, I think they did an alright job this year of getting some moments out, because the last couple of years before that, the only thing I'd heard of for years was, that fucking slap. And that was not something that they wanted, I believe. I don't think they wanted that to happen.
No.
I think
Will Smith did.
Yeah, Will Smith did, but that was pretty bad PR for the Oscars.
I still think he should have done a fucking suplex.
It would have been a lot better. Of just one ineffective slap. It's no, just drop him.
I saw that as well. People were like, "Yeah, man, we need to." Where was Will Smith this year? When I saw that really cringy moment of Jimmy Kimmel making fun of Robert Downey Jr.'s drug problems, and you could see like he makes a joke about it, and they go on Robert Downey Jr.'s face, and you see him like laugh it off, and you think, "Okay," so but then Jimmy Kimmel keeps going, and Robert Downey Jr. is like, "Yeah."
Like, yeah, I overcame a problem 30 years ago, mate, thanks. Or 20 years ago, whatever it is.
And everyone's like, where was Will Smith? Oh, they should have that. They should have it once a year. Like,
yeah, I was just going to say, just to clarify, I am under the opinion that Will Smith was the cunt in that scenario.
oh, yeah.
I'm not trying to endorse what he actually did, but in a jokey way of like, yeah, where was Will Smith?
It was like, he was very, very...
Oh god, no, Carl's dying again. Something is going wrong with one of our internets. Like, we'll figure this out, because maybe we'll round it there, but just...
Yes.
It's been a couple of minutes, and twice we've had, like, just some kind of problem with our connection, but... Oh, it's been lovely to have everyone join us live, and, you know, mention just if you'd like to give us a rating or a follow or whatever on whatever services you use to watch and listen to this, that would be lovely. And thank you all for joining today. We will be back next week to talk about X-Men 97.
Perfect, yes. See everyone next week, and cheers for watching.
Now,